Okay, got the thumbs up. With that, I'll call the meeting to order at 9:30 a.m. The agenda, I'll start with Joan. Any additions from administration?
No additions to the agenda.
Council, any additions from council? Not seeing any. Can I, Council Wilhelm?
I will motion that council adopts the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Motion on the floor. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Got a couple minutes here. Start with the adoption of the minutes from the special council meeting of May 14th, 2024. Anybody wants to move the minutes?
I'll move the minutes of the special council meeting 14th May 2024 as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Coogan. Call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Special council meeting from May 10th, 2024 minutes. Any errors, omissions, anything you see there? Councillor Wilhelm?
I'll motion to move the special council meeting May 10, 2024 as presented.
Thank you very much. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. And, the council meeting of May 8th. Councillor Dean.
I'll move that council adopt the minutes from the council meeting from May 8th, 2024, as presented.
As presented. Thank you very much. Call the question. All in favor? That's carried. New business 9.1, Declaration of Seniors Week. Mrs. Anderson.
Good morning, Region Council. So before you today is a request to declare June 3rd through 9th as Seniors Week. This is going to recognize all the wonderful work and future contributions that our seniors make in our community. We haven't declared it officially for several years, so I think this is just a great opportunity to kick off this the Seniors Week. We have a lunch planned, or 2 lunches planned, one in Anselmo and one up in Topland, so we're hitting both sides of the municipality. We have lots of people already registered. It's great. Things are excited, or people are excited. Just like to officially declare it Seniors Week.
Thank you. Just one quick question. I know we got the events planned there at Anselmo in the Fort. How receptive have the public been to that as far as like attendance or whatnot?
So
how many
far?
people have you had sign up so far?
Yesterday, I think I had 35 at the one, probably 50 at the other.
Oh.
I didn't check this morning.
Okay, no
And then
worries.
we're gonna be on the radio for the next 2 weeks in the area, so I'm anticipating more. I'm thinking we're gonna hit what we did 2 years ago. We had lunches at all 5 halls, and they were all well hit. I think we had 30 to 50 at each hall except the first one, but that's okay. But this year, I think the ads and the advertising we're doing and everything is really getting people excited. And so, yeah, and I think they're really, when you see the poster, the gentleman that's performing, he's, we saw him, Joan and I were at a conference, the recreation conference up in Lake Louise this year. He's very good. He tells stories, he plays his guitar, and he talks about the story behind how he wrote his songs, and I think that our seniors will really connect with that kind of storytelling, good feeling kind of music. So I'm hoping we're gonna get them dancing too.
Thank you. Councillor Dean, I seen you had up there.
Yeah, if there's no other questions for Heather, I just wanted to move that council declare June 3rd through June 9th, 2024 as Seniors Week in Woodlands County.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Okay. You got kind of a light in or out of camera here, so reports. We'll start 11.1, council reports and questions. Councillor Dean?
I'm not prepared. I don't have my list in front of me. I had a very light week though, so if you could come back to me.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Councillor Coogan, or
Just a second, I'm just,
no worries. Councillor Wilhelm?
So I don't have too much to say. You guys know that I've been out of town working for the last while, but I did, the last time around, I had said I didn't have anything, and I actually had something from the Lac St. Anne Foundation. So we had done our follow-up capital plan for new facilities that we potentially want to put in the area. One in Marythorpe and one in Whitecourt, just to meet the needs of the growing demand of seniors in the region. And so in June, we're going to have a more concrete plan coming forward on how we're going to do the capital funding for that. Part of that will be coming from the residents in the municipality as well. So we could see an increase in the requisition from the Lac-Saint-Anne Foundation to pay for these new facilities. But we are looking at a potential 30-room upgrade to the lodge in Marythorpe, which would meet the needs of the growing population there, the growing senior population in that area, and then a long-term 10 to 15 years down the road in the Whitecourt Woodlands region, I think it was 120 room facility. So as more information comes out from that, I'll bring that to council so you guys can know what the potential ask will be for the increased requisitions. But it's exciting because we do have a significant increase in seniors' requirements coming forward in the next 10 to 15 years, and we need to find a way to house them, and we've got a really good plan for that. So I just wanted to put that out there for you guys to know. In the next couple months, I'll bring some more information forward for you.
Hey, any questions for Councillor Wilhelm? Move over to Councillor Williams.
I had a few meetings I went to. I attended a BARC meeting, and we went over some workshops that they'd completed, and talked a lot about scam prevention and education. And you always hear about different scams, and one of the officers there shared a story. Obviously, didn't use any names or anything, but there was a scam in Barhead that was over $70,000 worth of gift cards that was purchased and sent to somebody. And I guess it's quite popular right now. Some of the businesses in town have reached out to the RCMP, and people are coming in and buying like $5,000-$7,000 worth of gift cards and sending them away. And it's mostly seniors, but they're trying to put out as much education on that as possible. So I didn't really realize it would happen in Barhead. Like you kind of think that it's a city thing or whatever, but he said it's really, really common right now. So just if you know anybody you want to talk to about that. And then we had a library board meeting, Woodlands County Library Board meeting. That's always a fun meeting to go to. They're very good. They just hired a new program coordinator, so they'll be even doing more around the community. So that's pretty good. And then Fort Simba Ag Society meeting. They're starting to gear up there for the Hamlet Hoedown coming up. Some sponsors are rolling in for that, making some plans, and that's about all I've been up to, I guess.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Williams? Councillor Wilhelm?
I just wanted to follow up on that. I actually do have a good older friend who was taken in a gift card scam just recently. It's over $1,000. And the way that it's happening is the scammers are spoofing people's Facebook accounts, sending messages with very realistic looking Facebook accounts, and then it just progresses from there. And I saw the messages that were sent to this person, and they're very tricky in the way that they get them to deal the money. They're offering more money for this and all. I don't know how they get as much background information as they do when they're doing these conversations, but just people be wary on Facebook and social media, because those scams they're not as easy to see anymore.
If I could follow that up, they said some of the problem that's happening is AI now. So they can make people like phone calls sound like different people, different things. So it's quite complex how they're doing it. And one of the flags that some of these businesses are doing is some of these scammers get people on the phone and won't let them almost not hang up, and they'll be in there buying gift cards while they're on the phone. And the one or a couple of businesses and the RCP kind of talked about, if it's a large amount of gift cards, they're actually denying the sale because they're trying to prevent from happening. So it's quite a thing. So it's good that BARC's looking into that and some different workshops on it and education.
And for anybody, what was it's not just older people that get taken in those as well. I know personally know people younger than myself who've been taken in some of those scams that come up to. So they target anybody. Just something that everybody needs to be worried about nowadays. And, any other questions for Councillor Williams? Thank you. Councillor Prestige.
It was a pretty light couple weeks. Had some special meetings. Had a Blue Ridge Community League meeting. Not much new going on there. It's just summer's coming up and things are slowing down for the league. Had a NPC meeting. It was fairly eventful. Some residents don't want a guy with his log truck parking it at home. And had our victim services meeting last night. Not much is changing there, we're just waiting to shut down in the end of September. On a sad note, it'll be a week ago last Saturday at the racetrack at Blue Ridge. We had a fatality. There was 2 volunteers from Blue Ridge working alongside the track. Not sure what they were doing, but one guy's he's 65 years, was 65 years old. Always volunteered wherever he could. Was working along the track, and a young kid riding his dirt bike lost control and hit the guy. And basically, he was deceased immediately. So, not a good thing to happen. I guess that kind of stuff does happen. And the weirs along the river at the bridge at Blue Ridge, they're almost done. Looks really good. Now we just need water in the river to see if it would work. The river's really low this year. Other than that, that's about it.
Any questions for Councilor Prestige? No? Councilor Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Reef, and I am prepared now. Like everybody else, I attended a couple extra council meetings. But of note, the committee meeting that I attended, the ASB committee meeting was interesting last week, and I won't steal the chair's thunder, but we had a presentation by a couple who trap well bores, and that their contract with the province is changing, and they made a very, very informative presentation to our committee, and gave us lots to think about. Hopefully that program continues in its effectiveness, because as Peter mentioned in the meeting, if you let a situation like this get slightly out of control, it's really hard to bring it back, and they're doing a pretty good job. So hopefully that level of service doesn't decrease for us. And then we've been invited to a field visit by the provincial board. So we're looking forward to meeting with that provincial board. And that's it.
Any questions for Councilor Dean?
Just to add to Councilor Dean's report there, the interesting part of that whole presentation was that the provincial government initially were the ones that wanted to diversify the agricultural industry, and what they did was they allowed, without real thought, to have the wild boar populations brought into the province. So they're quite different than the feral hog, which is a native is a domesticated species that goes wild. And the problem is that they're not really willing to fund the control. It's been done through Alberta Pork. And so I think the initiative that the Ag Service Board is going to take is to try to develop a resolution through RMA and through the Ag Service Boards to have the province step up and have a really serious look at this, because if you have ever seen what's happened down in the United States, we don't need that here, because it's worse than rats. So just as a side note to Councilor Dean's.
Any other questions, comments for Councilor Dean? Councilor Cluban?
Yeah, I'm on the 12th of May. I attended the trade fair, and that was incredibly well attended fair. Like there, I was only there in the later part of Sunday afternoon, and it was unbelievable the amount of people that were still going through, and they were there right till the very end. Like it was busy right to the end, and once again, Bert was the whirling dervish there. Like he bounces out into the middle of the aisle, and we had more people attend, I think, the Woodlands booth than pretty much anybody there. So it was really a good event. And then on the 14th, we had our service board meeting, which was really informative, and like we are looking into this wild boar problem. We had again on our MPC on the 15th, which was probably one of the most debated ones that we've had. And what was interesting there is it brought out a lot of the issues that we're going to have to bring to development in as far as how we approach some of the bylaws that we have because of the situations that are created. And the other thing that was really apparent, I think, when we had conversation afterwards, was the fact that the discussion is really good, but we make decisions based on the rules that are there. And so that's the route that we're going to have to take. And unfortunately, there's going to be some people that are not going to be happy with that, but those are the rules, and we can't change those just because somebody's unhappy with the rules. Then I had on the 16th, I had a family community support services meeting. And really happy to say that the Ford office is really being, once a week is being used quite well. So the dollars that Woodlands has invested in our community through the structure is working. It's a really interesting and quite a dynamic board. We have a very active executive director, and I can see that there's going to be some involvement on a number of different fronts with the municipality for planning in the future. So that's a really good thing. And then I believe I guess it was on Tuesday, Bruce and I we're on a subcommittee that is looking at how we, as a Regional Economic Development Alliance, bring some of this NRED money, which is the Northern Regional Economic Development Initiative that the provincial government has put out. How we were approved as a RETA for some of that money, and it's basically educating people on the energy transition, greenhouse gas emissions, and we had an incredibly productive meeting. It was a half-hour meeting with our executive director, and we have a plan now on going forward to figure out exactly how we're going to present the education. And what the conversation was about was the fact that there seems to be a real resistance, now maybe not a resistance or an ignorance of the fact that as municipal elected officials we have a responsibility to really understand what's happening and how these new policies are going to affect us as municipalities. And that responsibility is education. So what we determined was that we have a lack of education in the elected officials area, and we have an incredible lack of education in our communities. And if we don't start with our kids and having them understand that they're the ones that are going to be the ones that actually are going to be involved in this. So we're looking at a three-pronged attack on how to put podcasts and things together, and we may be asking for some input from our councils to see how we can move that forward. And that pretty well brings us to today.
Any questions for Councillor Kuhlman? Councillor Preston, Burrows?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, like other councillors have mentioned, we had a couple of special meetings that we had to deal with. Again, the trade fair, I'll give props to Bert, he, as usual, was running around with the Energizer Bunny. He set up a fantastic booth that kind of looked like a little green alcove built into the corner of the trade fair. It was great. And the kids fishing pond, I don't know if anyone mentioned the kids fishing pond, but that was a great idea. It went over really well, and I think even a few adults tried it. Maybe I was one, I don't know. Locally, that's the bulk of what I've been dealing with. I can kind of update you a little bit on some of the things that the RMA's been tackling. I don't think it's and it might not be a bad idea to have a discussion around some of these directions that the Alberta government's moving in with Bill 18, Bill 20 and 21. So one is to do with the Emergencies Act. We had originally had conversations with the province talking about improving communication between municipalities and the province on emergency response, and they've kind of come out with this legislation that allows the province to just take over an emergency, and we're not quite clear on how that's going to work. It doesn't seem to be quite driven by the recommendations that were in the reports that we communicated to the government. The other is the changes to the Local Elections Act. And there's lots of good things in Bill 18 with, criminal record checks and things like that. That's not a bad idea at all. The ability to recall councillors and overturn bylaws at the provincial, so local bylaws at the provincial election or the provincial level is somewhat concerning. The number one thing that I'm looking at is that you have to be aware of whatever powers you grant to government authority could be wielded by any political entity that gets into that authority, and we could be in the future uses of it could be a little more draconian than anticipated. So we'll be having more discussions on that, and if council wants to have a discussion on those bills, it would help me greatly to take council's viewpoints forward. There's a possibility, I kind of open my big mouth, and I might end up being on a podcast about these bills in the future here. And that's the bulk of it. But yeah, some really, really fast-moving changes coming from the province, and not a heck of a lot of information or opportunity for feedback on it. So.
Councillor Dean?
Just a question to Councillor Burrows. Thanks for bringing this up, and I agree that our council should just internally at least vet this and provide some direction for you. So maybe we can have a notice of motion coming out of this to put it on a future agenda. But I guess the question is, what do you think are timelines that this might become legislation? Like what type of lead time do you need?
To my understanding, they're going to table this legislation in the next few weeks, and they want to pass it by the end of the month. It's very rapidly moving, so
Have you
want
talked
deal
to-
with this before summer break?
Yeah, okay, understand that. Have you talked to either of our local representatives?
Briefly, yeah.
All right, would you like a notice of motion then to put this on a future meeting or a GMP meeting?
Yeah, absolutely.
Time seems to be of the essence, so maybe the next council meeting?
Sure, certainly, yeah. That would be
Okay.
great.
So I'd be happy to make that notice of motion when we come out of this portion of the agenda.
Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, just to add to the discussion. On Sunday, I was able to attend a debut of an interesting documentary film. Basically, Edmonton has become the documentary development center of actually Western Canada, which is tremendous. And because my daughter is involved, I attend this, and so I get to rub shoulders with some very interesting individuals, and I happen to have a conversation with a professor from the University of Alberta, and of course, we got into this Bill 20 and Bill 18 and 20, and the academia's concern is it's much the same as the way that things have slowly evolved with this government, is that these little tiny steps are the ones that get us into trouble. Every time there's a small erosion of the responsibility of local government and the things that local government do, it's very difficult to get it back. And like you were saying, is that this legislation has the possibility of just segueing into another one that erodes that a little bit more. And that's the concern, is that we have a system right now where there is recall. We have a system right now where there is a level of responsibility. And just because government is reacting to some of the exceptions that have happened within that space, there's a big concern that, local government is the only government in Canada that can't run a deficit. We're the only government that actually has a real direct connection, and that's being eroded, and that's worrisome. So, just part of that discussion that we should think about when we get into it.
I just want to say, if you look at some of the recommendations or some of the things you're putting into the elected kind of end of it for the municipalities, some of it I think is long overdue and needs to be part of it. I just think there's some of it, depending on how, ejecting a municipal official or the bylaw portion, depending on how the legislation is written, it could be dicey. I mean, we've had discussions before that it's very difficult to remove an elected official as it is, and there, especially even somebody with cause. So I understand needing to clear that up and make it more streamlined and easier through the operations of a municipality. But I think, again, it's kind of getting into kind of a little bit of a dicey thing if the legislation isn't correct and it becomes kind of overreaching in the power of the province. So we'll see. Councillor Wilhelm, I see your hand up.
I just wanted to mention, I did have a talk with MLA Long about this shortly after I saw it. Sent him a text message about it, and he called me immediately, and we had probably a 2-hour conversation about it. And unfortunately, the legislation is what it is. They believe in it, and they believe that the changes that they want to make will make removing problems in the future easier for them. And I just stated, you've stated in here that you want to make elections freer and fairer, and you're the only ones that are saying that elections currently aren't free and fair. And you're trying to currently fix a problem that isn't happening. You may have a couple small municipalities that have created issues. There is recall legislation in place for a situation like this. There are sanctions. There are policies and procedures in place to deal with problem councils and problem council members. And you're doing exactly to municipal government what you've asked the federal government not to do, which is come in and take control of local problems. You rail constantly against the federal government overreaching in provincial legislation and provincial regional politics, and now you're doing the same thing at a municipal level. And I said that I don't agree with what you're doing, and I think what you're doing is dictatorial, and you need to really think about the policies that you're putting into place, because you're trying to fix a problem that isn't there. And I said this piloting project about allowing party politics into municipal elections, it's very interesting to me that you've decided to do that only in Edmonton and Calgary. What are the majority of the MLAs that are in Edmonton and Calgary? These are NDP MLAs. They don't like that they've lost the large urban elections. So instead of catering policies and legislations to get more votes in those urban regions, they've decided to try to find a way to call out potential interested parties in those urban areas. And I didn't agree with it. Our conversation was long. It wasn't heated, but I I think what they're doing here is incredibly transparent, and I hope they own up to it, because this legislation, in my opinion, is pure garbage.
Any other questions, comments for Councilor Rose?
So I'll just, I appreciate the discussion, I really do, because we do have, this is a, at the RMA level, this is a media firestorm, and we feel like we're trying to stop a freight train at this point. And I think, as Councilor Wilhelm brought up, the problems that they're seeing, or the problems they've identified right now, are in Edmonton and Calgary. I think that they are being reactive to things that they see in Edmonton and Calgary that they don't like, and the rest of the municipalities are being swept up in this kind of legislation. And I kind of liken it to we've all experienced if Jimmy doesn't sit down, then nobody eats lunch, you know? And that's literally where we're coming from on this legislation. And yeah, so I will definitely take the energy and the feedback and make sure that I represent well. So thank you.
Councilor Dean?
Yeah, and just from a mechanical point of view, I don't think we need that notice of motion and further discussion. I think you've got the direction you need.
Yep, I believe so. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, move on to myself here. I guess we had a couple of special council meetings. The ASB meeting, again, most of that was covered with the presenters from the wild hog, I guess, eradicators there. Great presentation, kind of eye-opening, especially when you look at the costs that they incur. I think it was $320,000 a year that they feel budgetary is what's required to be able to, I guess, continue with their operation. So it is an expensive piece, and the
That was
province
for the entire province, right?
that's the entire. I thought that was just our portion when they were asking us.
No, they are working for the entire province. This would be
Oh.
this would be what they would be spending here, but
Yeah.
right now, they've been working for less than that for the entire province, and they
Yeah.
can't afford it.
Yep, it's surprising that the province is stepping
Yeah.
back from. Attended the trade fair, again, I was, Saturday morning there, it was greatly attended. We struggled through the smoke, whatever, from the day the doors were open. She was pretty hazy in there, but it was still very well attended, and again, props to Bert. On the Saturday morning, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he was one of the site selectors who was out here, was actually coming through the area, so got to have lunch with him and kind of hear some of the things on the horizon and some of the things he's working with Bert. So if any of their discussions come to fruition, I think we can be in a good position here. Last night had a meeting with the Whitecourt Library Board. They're working their next 4-year plan of service and just kind of updating their vision, mission, kind of statements and on that end they were doing. And I had my Anselmo Ag meeting. Just out of that, and we'll see a couple things come out of that. First one also came out of the trade fair, and I'm sure other councillors have had conversation with the residents around their tax notices that we got. I think it's very prudent, with any discussions I've had with residents to actually take a look. I'm very happy that we broke the provincial portion out of the municipal side when people look at their tax bills and be able to kind of showcase that a little bit more. But the large percentage of increase that the people are looking at that they're upset with, we had this discussion, their last meeting is on the requisition portion from the schools and the senior, and that's the biggest part to come up. So my recommendation, when I've been talking to these residents, is that portion is a provincial part that's out of the municipal control, and recommend talking to their MLAs. If they want clarification for why this went up or why it went up so much, that is a provincial conversation that's a little bit out of our grasp of what we have control on. We're basically just a tax collector. We get given the bill and we get told this is what we have to provide. So, other one that came out of the Anselmo Ag is, I guess, around our policing with our Laxing Land Foundation and some of the concerns around, I guess, how they've been policing and what they've been doing in the Anselmo area, especially around the transfer station. Had a discussion with Joan, so she is aware, I guess, of the details on it, and my understanding is they do have a meeting coming up and we'll take a look into it. So thank you for that, Joan. With that, I guess, any questions, comments? Councillor Prestige?
Yeah. On the wild hog, is this animals that have kind of reproduced over the years, or do we still have a problem with operators losing their hogs?
Both.
Both?
Yeah. There are a lot of very stringent legislation around fencing and requirements with securement and stuff for the operators that have them, but I don't doubt you still, they're pigs. I have pigs at home too, and they can be hard to keep in if they see something on the other side of the fence. But we do have a huge issue with the ones at large, the wild ones, and how quick they breed and they reproduce. It's a problem that's not going away. Councillor Dean?
Yeah, just to follow on that, to Councillor Prestige's question, I didn't realize that a group of wild hogs is known as a sound. And so the strategy is to trap the entire family, so that's a few adults and a bunch of young ones, and they're super, super cagey. And if they notice anything out of the norm, they're gone. And so these folks really, truly are experts. I think you could take a really good hunter and they just wouldn't be able to do what these folks do. And so it's more than just the few that are getting out.
The problem that the government has is that they're not understanding the problem that can be created. And like Al was saying, these people have discovered over the years that these hogs up here have developed their product to their environment, so they've developed quite a bit differently than the southern hogs. And they have to catch the whole group. If they miss one sow, that animal will go and reproduce again, and they will never come into an area that has that same kind of baiting system. So it has to be changed. And I couldn't believe the monitoring that these people do for days and days and days of having these animals come into the trap so they know how many there are. And that some of these sounders will keep 2 or 3 animals away from that bait area, so that just to make sure that there's nothing going on there before they come in, and they have to monitor that. And what was she saying? That these hogs will jump over a 6.5, 7 foot fence and clear it. Whereas, the equipment that they've gotten out of the United States, they've had to modify. So in the problem when it gets to a point where those herds exceed a certain threshold, then it's not manageable anymore. So they're trying to eradicate them completely. And part of that has to be is to figure out how they buy out the existing operations, because it's devastating to agriculture.
Councillor Brose?
Just coming back to that hog question, because we do, I don't know that we have any in the municipality specifically. I think we do.
We do.
Yep, we do.
In some of them.
Do we have, and we're looking at our land use right now and some of these things as well. Should we throw this on the heap?
Good idea.
To have a conversation around this, because I have sat in on several of these things, and I don't want to necessarily shut down existing, but
Not granting
certainly
more.
making anything worse would be advisable. So would we, maybe a question to administration, what the process to bring that to a discussion would be.
It's been noted. We'll bring that back with, I guess, the next land use workshop.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Any other questions, comments? Not seeing any. Can I get a motion to move the council reports? Council Prestige?
Make a motion to accept the council reports as information.
Thank you. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Brings us to 11.3, infrastructure service report.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the chair to council, I'm providing a summary of the operations update first. And we've been focusing our effort in the past months in seasonal changeovers, hiring seasonal staff, training seasonal staff, getting ready for summer. Some of the highlights, there's a free landfill week for the regional landfill this week. In terms of recreation, we have the Blue Ridge spray park cleaned up. It's ready for use. On the roadside, we have started drift removal for bridge and culverts. Bridge cleaning is complete. Roadway sweeping is complete. Brushing and mowing will commence in the summer. Pothole patching is a routine activity. Last thing to update on the operations side is road ban. Summer weights is coming on May 24th at 8 a.m., which is this Friday. And that coincides with Town of Whitecourt's changes as well. So that's the operations update. I'll move on to, sorry.
Councillor Wilhelm?
Just had maybe I'll let you finish and then I'll ask my question.
I'm moving to the capital project update.
Okay, that's where my question will be.
So I'll provide an update on the capital projects on selected projects. For West Mountain Road paving, East Mountain Road paving, the West Mountain Road bus pullover, Carsus Drive engineering, as well as Woodlands Lane in front of office here and office parking lot paving. All those engineering packaged together in one single RFP package that has been advertised. It's on the street. It closes in mid-June. So I'll have an update after the closing of the RFP. Going back to two bridge replacement, Bridge 578, 525. We have some issues with getting approval from DFO, the Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans. So that project will likely be delayed due to permitting. Bridge file 73605, working on the design. We should have a design tender package ready sometime in July, which can be tendered from that point on. The tender for Hudlock Canyon has been canceled, and we are working with the consultant for revising the tender for a late summer tendering. Moving on to the airport terminal upgrades, that has been complete. 99% complete. There's some paint touch-up work still left. For vehicles, we have received 4 half-ton trucks that was ordered, that's already in use. There are 2 additional 3/4-ton trucks that's en route. It's currently in Calgary. It's just waiting for delivery. Should be here sometime in June. We have ordered 1 tandem plow center truck from 2023 carryover budget. That truck will be here sometime in August of 2024. We have also ordered a second tandem plow truck that's going to arrive, out of the 2024 budget, that's going to arrive towards the end of the year. For the rubber tire backhoe, that's expected to be here in July of 2024. Skid steer, which was approved back in April, that's likely going to be here sometime this summer as well. That's the, one more update is the cold mix. We have engaged a consultant to look into the cold mix options, and that report is, it's coming sometime in August, early September. That's the timeline that we have. That's all my capital project update.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Wilhelm and Councillor Kluge.
Thank you. So you answered one of my questions already, so that's great. Good thing I waited. The second one would have been I'm just gonna find it on the list here. I see we've still included the 80,000 here for the administration access road and parking lot paving. We actually, in our final budget discussion, we moved that money from that project into surplus and then pushed that project to 2025. So I just wanted to understand why it's still included in the listing here, because are we getting the engineering to potentially do it next year? Because we shouldn't be doing it this year.
Through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm, for sure we're not doing the construction this year. This RFP is purely just to get engineering started.
Okay.
I did not move them $80,000 out of this page. I will make that move for next time.
Just making sure there's still an understanding of what's happening. Thank you.
Councillor Kulik and Councillor Dean.
Yeah, I'm just, through the chair to Jeff, I'm just curious on Carlson Drive. We did a road tour there last year, and is this RFP going to be just for the drainage, or does it include the mitigation for the, whether some of the trees that are on our right-of-way are part of the problem with the power lines and stuff there? I'm just curious of what all is included in that RFP.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Cookett, the RFP included looking at drainage, looking at the trail, and looking at the trees.
Okay.
Those three has to go together because the right of way is extremely narrow there.
Okay, good, thank you.
Councillor Dean and then Councillor Preston.
So I have, thanks, Mr. Reeve. So I have two questions. First one is just clarification. Did I hear you say that the engineering for East and West Mountain Road and the admin access, and that engineering cost, that was all together, and it was going to provide for three different estimates?
Through chair to Councillor Dean, yes, the engineering is all packaging one single competition, and the consultant will design them as separate projects, and it will provide separate cost estimate. It's just for ease of management, they are packaged together into one single RFP.
Okay, and thank you. And the second question is, I see in the capital, there's a note about the Cutbanks Road construction, and the second sentence speaks to a consulting service that's been retained to determine the feasibility of securing the riverbank bank adjacent to the existing road versus relocating the roadway. I didn't realize that those were options. I'm not sure if council remembers that discussion. I'm happy to see that, because that's a beautiful scenic road, and if it can feasibly be salvaged, I think that's an option that I'd hope council would look at closely. But is that a recent thing? Do you guys remember that at all?
Through chair to Councillor Dean, I spoke to the consultant myself, and he mentioned to me that this is the task that he was given.
Okay.
So the task that he was asked to do is to compare the option of keeping the existing alignment and do the bank protection versus realigning the road through a new road construction. To me, that's an important conceptual level question to be asked before we charge forward into preliminary engineering and detailed design. And I see no reasons to stop him for the pursuit of answering that question. He's going to come back with some results sometime in June. Late June is what he promised me, so
Okay.
I'll bring to council when that information is available.
Thank you.
Councillor Prestige and Councillor Burrows.
To the chair, Jeff, last year when we did our road tour, we went into down to the Blue Ridge, and I believe it's 2nd Street, there's a stretch of sidewalk that is all broken up, and across the street there's a ditch that's holds water all the time, and we were told that that would get looked after this year, but I haven't heard any. They didn't put it in the budget because it was just they figured it was a small amount, but it has to be looked after. The sidewalk has gaps are like 2-inch high, and people are complaining they're tripping on it. And so if we can look at that again, that would be great.
Through the chair to Councillor Prestidge, Andre did take me to site and show me the various different problems in the hamlet. I am waiting for the right opportunity in the summer when the operation side kind of quiet down, so I can drag a few more people to go there and to look at all the issues at the same time.
Yeah, and the same thing with, there's 2 intersections where the asphalt is broken up really bad, and there's getting some ruts in them.
Correct. That's one of the issues on the docket as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Burrows.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So through the chair to Jeff, I know this is like drinking through a fire hose where you're coming into a new municipality and dealing with all the projects that are currently going on and everything. So I can certainly appreciate there's going to be some transition, and hopefully we can make sure that goes well, because again, we have a certain vision of how things, we want things, and hopefully we can communicate that to you. So I just wanted an update on, I keep getting questions on any plans for the Old Ferry Road. So the Old Ferry Road was very eroded. We lost about 80 feet of the bank. And there is a section there that's actually barricaded off down to kind of it's technically 2 lanes, but there's a slowdown for it. And it's really, to use Councillor Dean's description, it's a very scenic road now. You're right next to the road. I was wondering if we could just get an update on where we're going with that road so that I can have that conversation as well.
For sure. Through the chair to Councillor Burrows. There were 3 flooded locations last year, 2 overtopping of the road and 1 bank being eroded. The 2 overtopping locations have been repaired, and I've been there myself. I don't see any further need of upgrades. The bank that was cut through the 2023 flood, the same consultant who's working on the cut bank road is also looking at developing the different options of bank protection versus realigning the road. And the same timeline applies, is by the end of June, we should have a conceptual report on whether we should be realigning the road versus protecting the bank. So I will bring that information back to council when it becomes available.
Perfect, thank you. And the second one was actually around the engagement of the consultant on the coal mix. So we had talked about the possibility of using different products, and I mean, council goes to these trade fairs and we get inundated with lots of different ideas, and we talked about some of the options that are coming. So are you, when you talk about the consultant, is there going to be a recommendation for products, and is any of that going to be communicated back to council? Because I think one of the tendencies that we've had in the past is to kind of keep doing things the same way that we've been doing them, and it's not necessarily working all that well in some areas. There are some areas where the road base is so bad that you can put a surface on it, but the surface is going to break up because there's too much flex. So it just won't take. There's one area out, one road out in my area that they cold mixed all the time, and it just stayed in this perpetual broken up state because the road base, there was nothing to pack it against. It just got pushed from one side to the other. So
Through the chair to Councillor Burrows, I'll make sure the consultant consider various different techniques in how to upgrade or change the philosophy on coal mix. I leave that to him to come up with the options, but I'll make sure he understands that we want alternatives in techniques. I doubt he's going to go down to the level of products because that's way too detailed from this point. Thank you.
Anything else? Councilor Willen?
Through the chair to council, should we look at in the near future, not doing it in the near future, but giving Jeff some time to get settled, but in September doing another road tour, just because new infrastructure director, we can highlight some areas again. And I think in the past, you guys have done that on a yearly basis type thing. So I wonder if September dates work again for everyone to get out on a road tour again for a day and get a look at the roads.
I would agree with you. We have a new director. It'd be nice for Jeff to be able to ride with us and let us point out some of the trouble areas and some of the issues that we have. I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't know if we need to schedule a date right now, but maybe at least get it on administration's radar, and at some point they can maybe do a dual poll or kind of see what's coming on. Councillor Dean?
It's a good idea. Can we schedule that bus that we were in last time that the stuff falls off?
Really gets home.
Councillor Buchan?
Yeah, through the chair to council, you know, I think maybe as well, we could ask you, Jeff, you know, your experience is great, and when you drive around our county, you may see some things that we should be aware of. And when we go on that road tour, if you have some of those areas maybe that you say, you know, this is a place where you're gonna start to see some issues, you know, down the road. It would be interesting, because we just get the feedback from the residents where their problems are, but we never ever really get it from infrastructure. It says, hey guys, have a look at this. So if you could do that, that would be really great.
Any other questions, comments for Jeff? Wait, Councillor Dean?
If there's no other questions, I'd move that council accepts the May 2024 infrastructure status report as info.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Brings us down, Mr. Worrell, the financial report.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. In October 2019, council did adopt a financial recovery plan for a 5-year period due to a number of ratepayers, oil companies not paying their taxes. I had mentioned at the last council meeting that the goals of the recovery plan had been achieved, so I wanted to provide an update to show that. 2 key points outside of the recovery plan is in 2023, council approved $2.9 million in extra capital and operational expenditures outside of the recovery plan. And in 2024, that number was $4.7 million. So that was beyond the recovery plan. So we're back to basically staffing levels at pre-recovery levels. And I would say the only thing we might not have captured is inflation costs. So when you look at the recovery program versus where we're at today in terms of the audited financial statements, our actual cash balance at the end of 2023 was $25.7 million. And the recovery plan had a number of 18.2 that was its goal. 2 other key points, as we did write off a lot of taxes, but we made sure we secured our requisitions back from the province. And our collection rate in 2023 was 96.8%. So we've seen a good collection rate. We do have some concerns on a few ratepayers just in terms of cash flow from due to natural gas prices, but we're in a much better shape on our subledger than we were in 2019 by a long ways. I'll take you to the first page. This was actually the recovery. The next page is actually the recovery plan. This is what council approved back in 2019. So it had a 15% operating budget reduction, a 3% tax increase each year, and a 1% cost increase in 22 to 24. One of the key factors of why we've done quite a lot better than we thought with the plan is because we have not had to write off taxes. So in the plan was actually $3 million annually, or $2.6 million annually put aside for non-collection of taxes. 2020, we had $3 million we did not collect. But in 21, we were 378,000, 2022, 458,000, and in 2023, it was 0. So we had significant extra dollars, and that's what you use to help fund our operations back to pre-recovery levels. I provided a kind of a comparison, just looking at it from a working capital perspective and cash from a chart. And you can see in 2019 what our cash level was at. We were at just under $2 million in cash at the end of 2019 in the bank. As of the end of 2023, we're at $25.7 million. So a turnaround of about $23.7 million. And that's against the $18 million that was in the plan. So we're $5 million higher than the plan at the end of 2023, and we've also included $4.7 million more in expenditures. And the last page, I've just provided an update to the end of 2024, so council can see what 2024 year end will look like compared to the plan. We are going to see a drawdown on reserves in 2024 due to the graders, so council did approve 4 grader purchases. And we will see an additional contribution from the savings on the lease that we were going to use for the graders and the sale of equipment that was in the budget. So overall, the drawdown is about $1.388 million in 2024. Part of the reserves at the end of 2023 were also carry forwards. So those are going to get spent in 2024, but we're also estimating that we'll have some other carry forwards going to 2025. So I've put in a drawdown of about $450,000 for that. So you'll see at the end of 2024, we're expecting to have restricted reserves of $15 million, unrestricted reserves of approximately $8.2 million, for total reserves of $23.3 million. Cash balance of about $27 million. So if you take it all into perspective versus what the plan was looking for, we've achieved every part of the plan. We have significantly recovered our cash, and we have added significant expense or operating and capital expenditures into the budget. One thing I will point out is the unrestricted reserve balance. At some point in time, council is going to want to sit down when we get a reserve plan together with an investment plan and a debt plan. Council is going to want to sit down and maybe move these reserves around. So normally you wouldn't keep necessarily just a whole big dollar amount in an unrestricted reserve. Council might want to commit that to certain areas of the organization. So that will be a key component that we expect will come back to council later this year. And I would ask that council accepts the 5-year financial recovery plan update as information, and if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
I do have one, and this is in regards to the reserves. I think you just seconded there, Peter. I know council has asked, I think we've had discussion too about having a discussion around all of our reserves and what we have and what we don't have, and I think that's probably prudent given the money we have there, and probably putting that all in the same discussion, and maybe coming through the summer months. I know our agendas seem a little bit lighter. Maybe it'd be a good time to try to get that on there. Through the Reeve, certainly that's part of the plan. That's one of our biggest plans, is to look at the reserve numbers, compare it to other municipalities, do analysis to see where we should be, what kind of reserves we should have. Currently, we have about, I think, 28 different reserves on our books. Some have, a few $1,000s in them. So we need to look at the whole idea of what we need for reserves, including with an investment plan around that, because we're now sitting on fairly large cash balances. We think interest rates are going to start going down, so it's time to start looking maybe a little longer term on our investments. And the other thing is we need to tie it to our debt. So I know council is always concerned about debt levels, but that's part of the equation. All these three things kind of roll together. And so that would be something that we'll want to come back to council fairly quickly in 2024. Councillor Cook.
Yeah, through the chair, and this is, I think, for the public, for council, and a big thank you to you, Andrew and Lan, for opening up those newbies like myself to exactly how this works, because this is completely, like I've said to you before, it's a completely different way of approaching funding, but than from the private sector. But what I'd like to say here is, first of all, this recovery plan was started by some of the councillors that were still on the board here, and kudos that happened, because I can see now that this is a long process, and had you not done that work prior to us being there, we would be in a lot more difficult situation. And secondly, is the fact that we had an administration that was able to discipline themselves to stick to a plan that we put together. And the last part of this is that I would really like us to do as council, as previous councils done, seeing that we're halfway through our term, we don't know whether we're going to be here. but to set a plan for the next 5 to 10 years as well, and build on what Andrew is saying, is have a really serious look at what our debt is, where our reserves are, because this is what is going to make this municipality successful, is really intricate planning on our financial side. And so I'd just like to say thank you to you guys for starting that, and thank you for, helping us understand a little better how this municipal funding works, and let's make this work better.
Any other questions, comments? Councilor Rose?
So I have a couple. They're all good though. The one thing that I wanted to, and you illustrated that 3 million in doubtful accounts that we thrown into the plan, and I think that was a key area for us, because in the budgeting process in the past, I believe the amount we used was $40,000. And when you see the doubtful accounts keep piling up, so I'm wondering, do we have a flagging mechanism? And part of this is that we saw the unpaid taxes not happen. And in the past, we had this, well, don't worry, it'll get paid next year. It'll get paid next year. So it carried forward, and it kept staying on the books as a collectible. So there really wasn't necessarily a warning flag there to council in the reporting to make us aware that we had this large, outstanding, uncollected, possibly not uncollectible, and I think that really bit us. And it bit a lot of municipalities. I mean, this is a $260 million problem running across the province that they still haven't fixed. So my two questions on this issue are, with our doubtful accounts, I think what are we currently at for our doubtful accounts in the current budget? Is it 400,000?
Through the chair to Councillor Burrows, we budgeted 1 million for doubtful accounts. But we have set up already in the allowance, all the major oil companies that haven't paid us, except for one. So we've already set up the allowance for anybody that's just passed over the year arrears. And so I think our total subledger at the end of December was less than $1 million. So we have flagged those oil companies. And what we'd also have to do quarterly is provide the province with all arrears on taxpayers or oil companies, so that they flag them for future, if they want to buy new licenses, the province is aware that they owe municipalities money. The one we are concerned about, just because we know they have cash flow issues and they're not paying their bills. So we monitor it, but we don't really have a lot of options at this point in time. The price of natural gas will probably determine whether that oil company survives. That would be my view on that one.
Okay, thank you. Again, it's just an issue that I want to make sure we don't get caught with in the future. And would you recommend that we keep that 1 million point in the budget going forward? My point is, I don't want to get to the point where future councils are saying, well, we're comfortable now, we don't need that doubtful amount. What's the number we should mix into the secret sauce here? 1 million, 500,000? Should we leave it there?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Burrows. So you have kind of two options. You can continue to budget for it on an annual basis, or you can start setting up a reserve for uncollectibles. So you could have a reserve that you've got built up. Let's say you could put 3 million away for that, and you have a fund just sitting there if you happen to get in that situation. And then you don't have to budget it every year necessarily. So you have two options, but right now it is in the budget, and I would suggest that you should continue to plan for that given the circumstances around natural gas and oil prices.
So as a strategy, then I guess we could maybe do a combination of both until. So if we left the 1 million in doubtful, and we end up not using it, if we create the reserve, then we could dump that money from the uncollected that's actually collected. I don't know whether to call it a shortfall or it's not really a short. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But the funds that actually is short on, but technically long on, into a reserve that funds that going forward, and then we could remove one. as a strategy.
Yeah, through the chair to Council Burrows, I would suggest that would be a method that you could use, because when you look at the reserve funds, one of them is gonna be the uncollectible reserve, right? It's gonna be one of your reserves probably to have, so the only thing with putting it in your annual budget, of course, then you're aware of it every year, you have a number and you actually collect it from the ratepayers, so you may want something and you could put it to reserves if you don't use it, to build your reserve over time, so that's one of the options.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, the second question, I got one more after this too, but the second question is, we had, and I want to make sure that we don't lose this in the transition that's going on right now or whatever. We had originally talked about you staying on to do a study for us on reserves and, you know, what those reserves are going to look like and how much they should be and where they should be allocated to. I just wanted to make sure, is that currently the plan still, or is that project going to be somewhere else?
Through the chair to Council Burrows, to be honest with you, it hasn't been broached from an administrative perspective. I technically am finished on Monday when Denisha, our new director, starts.
Okay.
So I was kind of leaving it up to her if she wanted to use other resources, but she'll have to talk to the CAO and make that decision technically. And I guess I'm still going to be around to support her as long as she needs from a perspective of passing the torch on to her, but I was expecting to be done by the end of June.
Okay, and I'm gonna ask the rest of the council, because I believe that was a communication from the previous CAO to council that was gonna happen, but I just wanna make sure I'm not remembering things wrong. And I'd certainly like to see something, whether it's you or anybody, this is something that's really necessary that has to be done. The third thing that I'm gonna ask is, we talk about reserve funding, but there is a strategy too. When you collect money at the reserve level for future projects, you have the current generation paying for the next generation. So there's this big argument about, you know, does the current pay for the future, or does the future pay for the past, or does the, you know, how do you do this? So the sweet spot I'm thinking would be a combination between reserve funding and financing on some of these, on a lot of these projects. I think would be the sweet spot. And borrowing money always makes me nervous as an individual, because I know I've got to come up with that money annually, and there is a strategy to it. So I'm wondering if council would be amenable to, when we talk about these reserve strategies, that we're also talking about the financing end, because there is good financing that we can do. There are cost savings to be had by doing a project earlier rather than later based on savings, and you can catch up on some of the inflationary pressures, along with, you know, losing revenue on holding cash in that current value, so you lose the inflationary value of the dollar. So, and if you have any ideas on that, I'd love to hear it to council.
Through the chair to Councilor Burrows. So that would be part of the equation when you do the reserve analysis. Debt. What's council comfortable with? Compare yourself to other municipalities. Actually, Woodlands County has quite a bit of room in their ability to take on more debt, and it is a philosophy. I'm more of a believer, if it's a 25-year project, that it should have debt financing so that the people pay for it over the life of the asset, as long as you're staying within council's view of how much debt you want to take on. So you may come up with an analysis to say, well, we don't want any more than take on 15% of debt on our capital, our long-term capital. You might, in that analysis, determine what your philosophy is as a council and what you can take on. I would say, from my perspective, that's probably the proper way to treat long-term projects. And short-term projects would be more, you could take from reserves or from current year operations. One thing, we're not really funding capital very well from taxation, right? We've kept it at 3.8 million. And that's an area where you probably might want to look at annually increasing your capital from operations. So if you do go with, let's say, with a 3% tax increase next year, you'll have that ability to raise maybe 3% on capital, 3% on operations, or whatever the number is going to be. But you need to get the capital amount up, because we're really in a situation where municipal affairs is saying we're letting our assets deplete, and we're not we're not maintaining our assets at a level that's adequate.
Can I just, sorry, there's just one thing that I want to touch on. And I think what you were talking about was the cash financing over long-term projects. And this is the reason that I think this is something that council needs to be aware of is when you talk about the strategies of dealing with, financing capital through, for example, offsite levies, big offsite levies that are front-ended on some of the projects, there is a discouragement of development because you have this large front-ended program and that can have economic development consequences through the municipality. Whereas when you finance through a period of time on projects, you can incentivize development to keep going along the way and kind of get the ball rolling. I just wanted to, I kind of heard that in the background of what you were talking about, and this is why I want to have this discussion, and I think it's something council needs to be aware of. We can stifle projects by having them too front-end loaded on the collection of things like offsite levies and others that would normally go ahead, and they can just make them unsustainable. So maybe I heard that wrong from you, but I think you kind of touched on it.
Through the chair to Councilor Burrows, I wasn't really thinking from the offsite levies perspective. I was thinking just more of a long-term road project, like capital for the municipality. From a development perspective, I would probably defer to Joan in terms of what would be a good strategy in terms of not stopping development in the county, because it does stifle. You have offset levies, could stifle growth, but it's more of a development issue than a boring issue for the budget.
Councillor Prestige, I have Councillor Dean and Councillor Booth.
Through the chair, I'd just like to make a comment on what Councillor Colkin said and something Councillor Burrows said. In 2019, we had no idea as council in the dire situation we were in. We had a council meeting, we were looking at buying 2 graders, and we were supposed to have $6 million in reserves, and there was none. And the same meeting, we found out we were out $12 million. I can distinctly remember we had a brand new CEO, he was there for 2 weeks. And his comment after was, I just started the job and I find out the county's broke. And our 5-year plan was basically out of necessity. We had our backs to the wall. We had to do something or we would not be able to operate. So it was a dire situation. Council had the easy part of making a motion and putting their hand up. But it was administration that pulled us through. So just a big thank you to them.
Okay, Councillor Dean.
My question was covered.
Okay, Councillor Kuchen.
Yeah, I guess I just want to add a little bit to what Councillor Burrows was saying about, the way that we move forward in the future. And I think what we're asking for, and maybe those of us who sit on the tax policy committee have a little bit more of that information, is I think what we're looking for is to develop a policy that can be enduring in the future. We're the next the next group of councillors that are in here can understand it, have a good look at it, and say, yeah, this makes perfect sense, and this is the procedures that we want to follow. Because I think what Councillor Prestige just said was that he sat on a council that was not aware, and it was probably because there were no policies to drive that responsibility. And so I think that something that we're going to be looking for at the policy development level is to figure out how we're going to have a very pragmatic policy that allows us to move forward in the way that you've been kind of leading us forward right now, and that endures.
Thank you, Councillor Dean.
I think I speak for all the council that I look forward to that conversation about debt levels and reserves and investments. You know, we're fortunate that we're on a good path right now, and I look forward to that conversation. If there's no other questions, I'd move that we accept the 5-year financial recovery plan update as info.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you again, Mr. World. With that, we'll go down to the last report, and then we'll take a break when we break for closed meeting. CEO report. Ms. Lubert.
Your worship, members of council, last week I was in Kananaskis attending the Society of Local Government Managers conference. It was well attended. I was able to attend 5 of the sessions. A lot of it was around effective leadership, building resilience in the workplace. Municipal Affairs had done a presentation with respect to responsibilities and the chain of command, so to speak, through what's directed through the Municipal Government Act as far as CAO, administration's role, staff, roles of council as well. It was good to see the leap off of what our staff had attended out at the casino previous week. And then leading into this particular conference where there was a lot of talk around leadership and how that works within a municipality and the barriers and challenges that we do face. Andrew's team has got the tax notices out, as I'm sure everybody's well aware. They've probably received theirs. There's been a steady influx of individuals come into the counter. The girls have indicated, of course, there's concerns expressed with the increase that we've seen, but they've been doing a great job of explaining that. In looking at some of the potential items for the DFPP, the Drought and Flood Program, we may have found a little bit of a gem in talking to our provincial partners, is that they're looking, when we mentioned that we were looking to do maybe some flood hazard assessment work around the Freeman River and the Athabasca from where we had left off from Pride Valley and coming forwards to the Fort Assiniboine, is that they were quite intrigued that we were looking at maybe doing something with respect to that, and would like to have a meeting with administration to look at a potential partnership. So maybe outside of the funding, there may be some more opportunity there as well. So we're just looking at getting a meeting set up to deal with that. Administration's also looking right now. We've received 5 proposals on our financial and asset management systems. And on Friday, we'll be reviewing those as a team and determining which one will, or which few I think will have come and do some presentation as to how those systems will work and hopefully work together. And then, of course, excited next week we have our Director of Corporate Services start with us. So looking forward to onboarding her and yeah, having a complete director's team. It'll be nice.
Before you just want to start by thanking you, Joan, for stepping up here for the last little bit that you've been filling this role. And if you can express our gratitude to staff. I know we have a bunch of people off on holidays and stuff right now, and you have people wearing multiple hats at different levels, and you've been doing a great job keeping things going. So thank you, and thank your team. Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, just a comment on the new computer program. This one is that the asset management piece is going to talk to the financial piece. Is that what you're trying to sort out here?
The chair to Councillor Kilkin, exactly. Yeah, we're hoping that the two will mesh well together and be able to communicate, and we'll be able to provide all those reports that council's looking forward to.
Perfect.
Any other questions for Joan? Not, Councilor Rose?
Sorry, I just wanted to thank Joan for the stepping up to the plate. It's all this conversation around 2019 and kind of what happened in the past is triggering PTSD. And I think we certainly have experienced a little bit of that in the last little while. So just thank you to the staff for doing what you do and for stepping up to the challenges and showing up every day and doing the job. Thank you again.
Thank you, I will pass that on.
Thank you. Seeing none, can I get a motion to the CA report? Councilor Coogan?
I'll make a motion to accept the CA report's information.
Thank you. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. And if we can get a motion to go into closed session under FOIPs 21, 23, and 17. We'll do the last part of the meeting. Councilor Coogan?
I'll move that we move into closed session at 10:55.
Okay, thank you. Motion
Under FOIP 21 and
23, 17.
23 and 17.
Thank you. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you very much.
Approve the following agreements. The joint use planning agreement between the Town of Whitecourt, Woodlands County, Living Waters Catholic Separate School Division, Northern Gateway Public Schools, and the Francophone Regional Authority of the Greater North Central Francophone Education Region. The joint use facility agreement with Living Waters Catholic Separate School Division, Town of Whitecourt and Woodlands County, and the joint use facility agreement with Northern Gateway Public Schools, Town of Whitecourt and Woodlands County.
Okay, motion on the floor. Call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Motion 2.
I move that council approves scheduling the first joint use planning agreement and formal agreement signing with all parties.
Okay, motion on the floor. Call the question. All in favor? That is carried. 12-2, Councilor Wilhelm.
I'll motion that council accepts municipal consultations as information.
Thank you. Motion on the floor. Call the question again. All in favor? It's carried. And 12.3, I'm not sure if we, somebody, Councilor Wilhelm.
I'll motion that council accepts the personnel matter as information.
Thank you. Motion on the floor. Call the question. And that's carried. Last one, 13, motion to adjourn. Councilor Prestige.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
No discussion on that. Call the question. All in favor? It's carried. We're adjourned to 12.4.